That song is Wind of Change by a group called the Scorpions. And I wanted to have us hear that because of the title, the Wind of Change. The talk title today is about winds of change. And sometimes it's great to have the central message repeated in a song. Some of the things about the song that may not be familiar, it was written by a West German band who performed across the Berlin Wall. And the singer is talking about being in a place where there was so much hope. There were 30,000 people that came to listen to the music, which was not typical in Moscow. It was an opening in experience for many people. And after that concert, that was what inspired the song. So the references, Gorky Park is a park in Moscow, and he's talking about the river that flows through there. He also talks about the Balalakwa, which is essentially a Soviet or a Russian kind of guitar. I give that background because sometimes we can get stuck on questions about, well, what's this and what's that? Now, maybe nobody else gets stuck on those kinds of questions, but I know for myself, sometimes questions come about and I cannot be present unless I get my questions answered. And I think creating that context helps us with today's talk, helps us with what it is that I want to be sharing about. So, to the degree that we allow ourselves to become less resistant to what upsets us in life, we are then enabled to embrace opportunities and move in new directions. We have the choice to stay in the comfortable, in the old. But when we step into change and chaos and disorder, we allow ourselves to open, to release blockages, and make choices to create a life that works for us. As we consciously poise ourselves in the realization that we live in pure spirit, new power is born within us. We find ourselves renewed by the divine life, by the divine intelligence, and able to embrace divine love. As we have gone through this past year and some odd months of the worldwide COVID, coronavirus-19 pandemic, has anyone found their lives unchanged? Has anyone found that it's just been easy to embrace? As we've watched a rising, growing consciousness in response to the murders of Breonna Taylor, the murder of George Floyd, how have we responded to the growing awareness of the pandemic of racial injustice that has operated at the center of American life throughout the history of America? As we've watched with the distribution of everything from food to vaccines we've continued to see the perpetration of injustice. We've continued to see more black and brown people serving in essential jobs and required to make sacrifices of their lives without much in the way of acknowledgement, without much in the way of celebration, without much in the way of even recognition. Even though many of us have engaged in staying home, where by all appearances we had less opportunity for change, I want to push back the curtain of the appearances and acknowledge the depths and breadths and widths and heights of the kinds of changes that we've been encountering. And we have the opportunity to reflect on how we engage with and enter into and respond to change. Everybody here, at least on Zoom and in the Center for Spiritual Living here, in Northern Lights, we all have a great familiarity with the term change your thinking, change your life. We could spout that off. We could say, change your thinking, change your life. Like taking a little Swiffer and dusting away the dust. Change your thinking, change your life. It's easy. We just apply that and boom. We're open. How actually easy though is it to change our thinking? How easy do we embrace a change in the way we think? I've talked about this before. I've talked about how we can be like the monkeys that get captured in the jungles. They put the banana in the cage, and as soon as the monkey puts their hand in the cage will not let them go. The cage comes down around that gripped hand. And the easy way out is just to let go of the banana. But how many of us are ready to let go of our bananas? We worked hard to get those bananas. But the problem is that now we are caught in cages. What are the cages of the thinking that we look at and we say, life is so unfair? Life is unfair, and I am sick of being caught in this cage. How ready are we to let go of our bananas? How ready are we to let go of our thoughts? How ready are we to let go of our feelings? Did I leave my phone over there? No? Oh, ha! My phone is right here. How ready am I to let go? There's a little poem that I'd like to remind us of. This is by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. We are gifted with freedom. Freedom is a birthright of each individual. We are free to choose and create our experiences. We are free to respond to the house guests that arrive. We are free to respond to that which comes before us. What Rumi reminds us is that the more that we hold on to a particular way of responding to meanness or malice, so we catch ourselves in meanness, we catch ourselves in malice. Think of the benefits that we gain from the judgment, from the self-loathing, from the self-flagellation, that we put ourselves through. What do we cost ourselves with the judgment of everything about ourselves? And don't get me started on the judgments that we pass on each other. You all know that I have been very ready to judge certain people. I just can't understand certain people. And I waste how much time and energy and emotional space in these judgments. Ernest Holmes wrote that the road to freedom lies through the intelligent use of nature's forces and laws. I may strive to engage in the world intelligently, lovingly, and I can still get caught. I can still fall down on my pathway. But bemoaning it and crying about it isn't the best use of our time. Ernest Holmes offered, instead of being confused by the situations around us, we should be calm, tranquil, confident that through reforming our word, we can as easily change the existing conditions as we perpetuate them. Let me read that again. Instead of being confused by situations around us, we should be calm, tranquil, and confident that through reforming our word, we can as easily change the existing conditions as perpetuate them. And he wrote that in Living the Science of Mind, page 202, if you really want to be technical about What do we do to contend with the changes that come about? What do we do in order to speak our word, to make declarations? Well, the person who prepared the ideas for today's talk, Reverend Natalie Beth Linguri, from the Center of Spiritual Living in Geneva, Switzerland, wrote about a lake, Lake Leman, near Geneva, Switzerland. And this lake has more than 70 different winds. And on the days with very little wind, when sailors are stuck in the lake wondering what to do, the wise ones know that they can look for subtle disturbances with the ripples on the lake. They can find the winds where there appear to be none. And their sails fill up, and the boats receive the power of the wind to sail towards their destinations. It's about being alert, and it's about keeping our eyes peeled. It's about keeping our hearts open. It's about keeping our ears open. It's about remaining receptive. Again, we say, change our thinking, change our life. Are we actually willing to change? Are we actually willing to look for where are the places that we can change? I was born onto this planet, this particular round, with white skin and with male genitals. And simply those two conditions set me up in a position of privilege that never created actions that I had to do. I simply had to show up. I simply had to show up as white and male, and certain things were automatically afforded me. What I can do about that, and how I can use that, is I can engage in the world manipulating my own privileges. I can work to turn my privileges around. I remember a sense of huge relief when I found out that the children that I contributed to bringing into the world were daughters. Part of that was because I did not really have a strong identity about myself as male, and it worried me that I would pass on this same kind of doubt about my own male capacity. With this recent election, I saw all of these white men making certain decisions, and I made the conscious choice that I didn't really ever feel like I fit in with white males. So at school where I work, I've started to use the pronoun they and them rather than he, him, because I wanted to claim that lack of identification with that group. That's one of the ways that I am embracing how it is that I came into the world. Being very clear about the questions and naming it overtly rather than simply standing by and saying nothing. So life brings us upsets. Has anyone had a life without upsets? Has anyone managed to make it through and just have life be dishing things out that are just good thing after good thing after good thing? I mean, that's what this faith suggests. Change your thinking, change your life. Everything should be perfect now, right? We know how this works. We've got the science. We can do it. No matter what, we can simply change our thinking, change our life. So if something crappy happens, we change our thinking, we change our life. And I lean back into what Rumi suggested. We don't always have the feelings inside of us to allow us to let our thoughts lift us out of where we have fallen, of where circumstances have placed us. We live in a time that is where racism is emboldened. Where for 4 years we had a president who was standing strong in something that is well recognized as white supremacy. I'm white and damn proud of it. And I don't want anyone saying that it's not great to be white, that it isn't perfect to be white, that white isn't the way, the truth, and the light. It's crazy. And the response has been the expression Black Lives Matter. And then there's a whole bunch of stupid white people that are like, well, white people matter. And then you get into the whole polemic of, well, we're not saying that white lives don't matter, but we're saying that black lives matter too. And we try to use the argument that when a house is burning down in a neighborhood, the fire department doesn't come and just spray water on every house in the neighborhood. They spray water on the house where it's burning. You know, I've refused to let the name of the officer who's on trial, I've refused to let that name sink into my consciousness because I don't really want to know his name. Who I care about in that case is George Floyd. Who I care about are the family of George Floyd. Who I care about are the witnesses to George Floyd's murder. Who I care about are the people who have come forward to bravely declare that murder is wrong. The prosecutors in that case have to be able to defend against all kinds of crazy distractions that get thrown out there. George Floyd died because his heart wasn't working right. George Floyd died because he had too much drugs in his system. George Floyd died because. You know, there's the song of the Wizard of Oz, because of the wonderful things he does. All the defense has to do is like get people to believe some crazy butted notion that something else happened. The bird of happiness flew by and distracted. Life is filled with upsets. And these become openings. These become places where we can stand and say that justice is about recognizing when a wrong has been perpetrated. Now, what do we do? What do we do? I described one of the things that I have done is how I embrace, how I accept my identity, how I speak about my identity, how I use my identity. So it might be claiming some new element. That's one possibility. I wanted us, and I proposed that meditation, that welcoming practice. By Father Thomas Keating, as a way, how do we welcome what comes to us? Rather than spend so much time resisting, how do we welcome? That's why we told that Rumi poem. I know that I've used it before, and I don't like to do it. I will use it again. Richard Rohr wrote, "I welcome all thoughts, feelings, emotions, persons, situations, conditions. It is in these moments when we are broken open and can release the blockages of our lives. Otherwise, we hold on to them with resistance." Let's become expert welcomers. Let's become places where people feel welcomed. I know for a while that Reba was wearing a safety pin. And the safety pin was an emblem saying, "You are safe in my presence. Who you are, what you are, is safe in my presence." Let us deliberately welcome. Let us deliberately make safe. When we catch our own feelings of anger or shame or depression or discouragement, rather than banishing them, rather than saying, "Begone from me, Satan," to recognize the divinity within that depression, to recognize the divinity within that discouragement. So let us look for the winds that are unsettling things. When life upsets us, to look at the opportunity with that upsetness. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor became calls to justice. They were a huge wake-up call for something that has been going on for more than 400 years. The injustice towards Black and brown people is not something new. It's not something that is just like, oh, click, it's happening. It's been a perpetration. But there was finally enough. This week there were more shootings. Last week there were more shootings. We continue to be in situations where there are shootings and shootings and shootings. And one part of our country is like, guns don't kill people, people kill people, so why would we put any kind of restrictions on guns? Why would we put restrictions on guns? Because people with guns kill people. And we really don't need automatic weapons that fire more than 100 bullets a minute. Really, what does that do to advance and make hunting a better experience? People agree on the notion of the value of background checks. People agree that if you're mentally ill, maybe you're not in the best frame of mind to be purchasing automatic weapons. Let's look for where the agreement lies. And if our politicians won't catch up to us with the agreement, then we've just got to bypass the politicians and find a way where there is collective agreement. And finally, be welcomers. Be a point of welcome. Even our own emotions that we don't love. I really can't claim to love those times when I was depressed. I can't claim to love those times that I've been anxious. Welcoming doesn't necessarily mean adoring. Welcome doesn't necessarily mean unbridled praise. Oh, I bless this and I praise this and I raise my anxiety. I'm not saying to raise and praise the anxiety, but I'm just saying let it be present amidst all of the other things that are going on. Welcome it along with the other things. Do we let ourselves be the monkeys caught in the cage, or do we let go? As long as we hold on to the anxiety as if it is the core of our being, we are captured and held captive to that. So I'm going to invite us to close with an affirmation. I welcome and attune to the divine presence. Easy, right? I welcome and attune to the divine presence. One more time, and say it like you mean it. I welcome and attune to the divine presence. And so it is.
I want to thank Reverend Vaughan for his talk today. I want to thank everybody for joining us on Zoom, Facebook, and in the room. And I want to thank everyone who's ever, as Reverend Vaughan was speaking in his talk about creating a safe space. Because I believe that is what we at Northern Lights have created. A place where you can be safe, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that's all we're asking in this life. And we can create those safe spaces within ourselves if we choose to. Many people know that I am all about choice. And the one question that he asked, and what I interpreted the question was how do I choose to react in this life, and how do we choose to act to situations, to people, to circumstances? I just give thanks for having that opportunity, for having that choice, and for choosing to be present here and now in this safe space. And so I give thanks for each of you this day, and knowing that we will be here next week. Reverend Pamela will be speaking. And to know that we are a place of safety, that we are that sacred ground, and knowing that being that sacred sacred ground and safety, space of safety, that we welcome others into our lives. We welcome these situations because they're going to come anyway, whether we welcome them or not. And what can we learn from them? What is the learning point? What is the advantage? Because I believe that there is, sometimes it may not appear to be an advantage or something good. But in the long run, if we look back and say, and yes, there was this one little piece of good. And so I give thanks for all who have supported Northern Lights, for all who have supported us in any way, shape, or form. And if you would like to continue to support, you can donate by going to our website, northernlightsspiritualcenter.com, and donate. And so I give thanks for this day. I give thanks for the presence of the divine in each and every one of us. For we are all expressions of that divine, expressing as only we can do on this earth. And so I give thanks. I let it go. I let it be. And so it is.